Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are on a listen-only mode for today's conference until the question and answer session. At that time, to ask a question over the phone line, you may press star 1. This conference is also being recorded. If you have any objection, you may disconnect at this time. And now I'll turn the conference over to Mohammed Samamara. Thank you, and please begin.
Thank you. Again, this is Mohammed Samamara, and I'm here with Michael Rudman. We're going to talk today about 2020 Participant Statistical Areas Program, PSAP. The Participant Statistical Areas Program, PSAP, occurs every 10 years in preparation for the decennial census. The PSAP is an opportunity for tribal, state, and local governments to review, modify, and suggest changes to the boundaries and the names for statistical geographic areas, such as tribal statistical areas, tracts, block groups, census-designated places, and census county divisions, based on U.S. Census Bureau criteria and guidelines. What's new in PSAP 2020? The Census Bureau integrated the Tribal Statistical Areas program that covered the tribal geographies in the 2010 into the PSAP. To help reduce the burden from the participants, the Census Bureau reviewed and adjusted the census tracts, block group, boundaries prior to the 2020 PSAP. Finally, the Census Bureau developed a new PSAP review and update software called Geographic Update Partnership Software, GUPs. GUPs runs within QGIS, which is an open source GIS free for our participants to use. GUPs offers the PSAP participant-specific tools to facilitate their review of PSAP boundaries. The presentation will cover all of the aforementioned changes for 2020 and a short demonstration of using GUPs to review, update, validate, and prepare submissions for delivery to the Census Bureau. At this point, we're going to divide this presentation into two different sections. The first section will be by Mike, and it's going to cover the PSAP criteria and guidelines. And the second section, I will do it, and it will cover more like a technical section using PSAP GUPs. Thank you, and I will let Mike start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed, for that introduction. Hello. Welcome to the Participant Statistical Area Program Standard Geographies webinar. Over the next 2 hours, we'll discuss participation in the 2020 Participant Statistical Area Program, or PSAP. One moment, please. This presentation will provide you with an overview of the PSAP program, the PSAP schedule, materials for your PSAP submissions, and an overview of standard statistical geography. It also provides an introduction to the Geographic Update Partnership Software, or GUPs, a technical demonstration of GUPs, an overview of the Secure Web Incoming Module, or SWIM, and information on assistance that is available to you for your PSAP submission. PSAP is a once-a-decade program which provides designated participants the opportunity to review and suggest changes to the boundaries and names for statistical geographic areas, based on U.S. Census Bureau criteria and guidelines. The Census Bureau uses these statistical geographies to tabulate and disseminate data for the decennial census, the economic census, and the American Community Survey. With the 2020 census rapidly approaching, PSAP gives participants the opportunity to review and update their statistical geographies, which in turn allows the Census Bureau to provide relevant statistics for those areas. PSAP allows the Census Bureau to provide statistics for local governments and data users who often need data for planning by smaller statistical geographic areas. PSAP is a county-based program. Participants review and submit updates for a whole county or counties. We recognize that in some parts of the country, such as New England, the official PSAP participant may be a town and city-based regional planning agency or council of governments. In such cases, multiple planning organizations may exist within a single county and often cover parts of multiple counties. For PSAP purposes, we have designated one agency to be the official participant for each individual county, with responsibility for coordinating review and submission of updates to the Census Bureau. In other words, a regional planning agency encompassing towns in 2 counties might be the official participant for one of those counties. A different regional planning agency might be the official participant in the other county. Both agencies may need to collaborate on review and update, with each then returning updates for the county for which they were the official primary participant. The official primary participant is responsible for coordinating review and update of statistical area boundaries and then returning those updates to the Census Bureau. Engaging with and including other stakeholders in the review process, ensuring that areas submitted to the Census Bureau meet the needs of a variety of data users in the local area. Because of the decision to no longer define traffic analysis zones for the Census transportation planning products, transportation planners should be consulted during the PSAP delineation phase, particularly with regard to special use census tracts and special use block groups. The changes we made to criteria for special use census tracts and block groups were based on comments from the transportation planning community and their interest in identifying employment centers. For this reason, it's important to include transportation planners in the review and update of census tracts and block groups. Census Bureau statistical areas are a shared resource that are most relevant when they reflect the needs of a variety of data users at the local level. Keep in mind that census tracts are increasingly used by analysts and researchers nationwide who are interested in data for small geographic areas. Examples of other stakeholders include other municipal, town or township, county or regional planning departments, economic development authorities, chambers of commerce and other business-related groups, academic researchers, and civic associations. So how would you engage these stakeholders? Notify local stakeholders about the start of PSAP and request input. The Census Bureau does not have a specific process that you must follow for notifying stakeholders. Please feel free to use any existing methods you have for communicating with other groups within your area. You can also try to organize meetings to discuss analytical needs and solicit suggested changes. The PSAP delineation phase begins in January 2019 with the delivery of delineation materials. Participants have a maximum of 120 days from receipt of materials to complete and submit any statistical geography updates to the Census Bureau. The closeout of the delineation phase begins in the summer of 2019 and includes preparation of materials to send to participants in time for the verification phase, which begins in January 2020. Participants have 90 days to verify that the final boundaries of the PSAP geographies are correct. A final closeout occurs after the conclusion of the verification phase. All tabulation geographies for the 2020 census are finalized in October 2020. An important item enclosed with the delineation materials is the delineation phase postcard. After comparing the standard statistical geographies and determining the update status of the materials, please complete the postcard indicating whether changes are forthcoming. The return of this postcard assists the Census Bureau with planning for incoming submissions and identifying participants that will not be providing any updates. The Census Bureau requests the return of this postcard within 30 days of receipt of the delineation phase materials. If you discover any changes are necessary to your PSAP materials after returning the delineation postcard, please contact the Census Bureau PSAP staff by email at geo.psap@census.gov or by phone at 1-844-788-4921 to let them know that a submission is forthcoming. And we will share this contact information again at the end of the presentation. The Census Bureau reviewed census tracts and block groups in nearly all counties, identifying suggested changes and adjustments to help streamline the review and update on the part of primary participants and to help reduce respondent burden. This is a new component of the 2020 PSAP based on feedback and lessons learned from the 2010 PSAP. The Census Bureau terms this early review and the associated updates as an internal review and its output as the 2020 proposed plan. Participants choose either the 2020 proposed plan or 2010 geographies when using the Modify Area feature button in the Geographic Update Partnership software, or GUPs. My coworker Mohammed will illustrate this during the technical demonstration. The Census Bureau recommends participants review the 2020 proposed plan. Participants may review and agree with the 2020 proposed plan, or they may adjust that plan. Taking this approach may streamline the review and update process if any updates are required. Use of the 2020 proposed plan ensures consistency of review. It should be noted that the 2020 proposed plan is just a recommendation, and the Census Bureau geography staff do not know the specific data needs of your community. PSAP participants should only accept the 2020 proposed plans after a complete and proper review. The Census Bureau provides specialized materials for participants conducting PSAP work. To support your review and update of your statistical geographies for the 2020 census, the Census Bureau created quick reference and quick program guides that summarize each standard statistical geography and digital delivery methods, as well as Microsoft Excel files of 2020 proposed changes for census tracts and block groups. In addition, we will provide Microsoft Excel files of proposed changes for census tracts and block groups for all counties. We will discuss this further in the presentation. The Census Bureau provides all information and instructional materials in digital format. The digitally formatted materials are located on the PSAP website, as well as the data disk provided to participants that requested DVDs during the invitation phase of the 2020 Census PSAP. We have included a table in the respondent guide listing each piece of informational and instructional materials distributed by the Census Bureau and identifying the participants receiving those materials. The Census Bureau is providing a Microsoft Excel file containing a list of changed statistical entities. This file is the output from the Census Bureau's internal review. This file appears on the data disk and is available online for download from the PSAP website. The file contains census tracts that have been split or merged or have had code or type changes, and census tracts with modified block groups. The goal of PSAP is to produce meaningful statistical geographies for data users while maintaining consistent statistical geography nationwide. As we mentioned, statistical geographies are a shared resource. While they initially served the needs of local planners, researchers, and analysts, they are now used nationwide in analysis by a variety of researchers, organizations, and government agencies. The Census Bureau classifies two types of geographies, legal and statistical geography. Statistical geographies are areas defined solely for data collection, tabulation, dissemination, and analysis. That said, we recognize that statistical geographies, census tracts especially, are used in a variety of federal programs. Though it is tempting to want to change boundaries to meet the needs of a particular program, please be aware that a change that may have a positive effect for one program may have a negative impact on another. It is better to maintain the statistical objectivity and comparability of areas, updating areas to meet the general analytical needs of as many data users as possible. Some statistical geographies represent areas that do not have legally defined boundaries or are surrogates for legal entities. For example, some quasi-municipal special taxation districts are defined as census-designated places, or CDPs. Examples include Friendship Heights Village, Maryland, Paradise or other unincorporated towns in Nevada, and Dakota Dunes, South Dakota. Other statistical geographies may be representations of entities that have or had a legal existence but may lack clear boundaries or may not fit within an agency's definition of legal entities. For instance, a municipality that disincorporated but still is recognizable as a known place may be defined as a CDP in order to maintain data continuity. Statistical geography boundaries generally follow permanent visible features that are identifiable in the field. Boundaries should follow visible features whenever possible, should use significant or major features on the landscape, align to legal geography where a relationship has been established and is unlikely to change over the decade due to changes in the legal entity's boundary. Boundaries should follow legal conjoint boundaries where applicable. For example, given the stability of city and town boundaries in the Northeast, census tract boundaries may align with the boundaries of a city or town. With census-designated places, it is preferable to align with a city boundary. Rather than to leave a small gap between the two places. Boundaries should also reflect current land use patterns where possible. Boundaries should not cut through housing and other buildings, include zigzags and sharp angles for no purpose, group disparate land use types for no reason, or make use of less prominent features when a more significant feature could be used. The next series of slides provides overviews of census tracts, block groups, census-designated places, and census county divisions, as well as their criteria, thresholds, and guidelines. Census tracts are small, relatively permanent geographic divisions of county or statistically equivalent, Census tracts are small, relatively permanent geographic divisions of a county or statistically equivalent entities defined for the tabulation and presentation of data from the decennial census, the American Community Survey, and other selected statistical programs. Census tracts nest within and completely cover counties nationwide. Their boundaries should remain consistent from one census to another to facilitate comparison of data over time. We will illustrate this process shortly, but first, let's review census tract criteria. The following criteria apply to census tracts in the United States, Puerto Rico, and the island areas. Census tracts must not cross county or state boundaries. Census tracts must cover the entire land and water area of a county. Census tracts must comprise a reasonably compact and contiguous land area with a few exceptions. Exceptions to the compactness requirement might include areas with unique population groups, land uses, or settlement patterns, such as coastal communities, a community ringing a lake shore, valley settlements, and commercial and industrial development along a linear transportation route defined as a special use census tract. Census tract boundaries should follow visible and identifiable features. Census tracts must have a basic numeric identifier composed of no more than 4 digits and may have a 2-digit decimal suffix. The Census Bureau may modify, and if necessary, reject any proposals for census tracts that do not meet the published criteria. In addition, the Census Bureau reserves the right to modify the boundaries and attributes of census tracts as needed to meet the published criteria and or maintain geographic relationships before or after the final tabulation geography is set for the 2020 census. Census tracts must meet specific population and housing unit thresholds outlined on the next slide. Census tracts, with the exception of special use tracts, must meet specified population or housing unit thresholds as outlined in this table. Meeting specific thresholds help ensure a minimal level of reliability in sample data as well as availability of data when disclosure avoidance methodologies are applied. PSAP participants should aim to create census tracts that meet the optimal population of 4,000 or 1,600 housing units and maintain the minimum thresholds unless it is flagged as a special use tract or is coextensive with a county with fewer than 1,200 people. The Census Bureau uses a housing unit criterion to accommodate seasonably occupied areas in which the decennial census population count with a reference date of April 1st and may be lower than populations at other times of the year. A census tract that exceeds the maximum threshold should be split into multiple tracts. Those that drop below the minimum threshold should be merged with an adjacent tract. If a participant chooses not to split or merge tracts that do not meet the approved thresholds, they must provide a justification for retaining the existing geography. This helps the Census Bureau with the review of submitted geographies, as well as answering questions from data users who are familiar with the 4,000 person optimum population. Participants should use the 2020 census population and housing unit counts for census tract review in most cases. Locally produced population and housing unit estimates are permissible when reviewing and updating areas experiencing considerable growth since the 2010 census. The housing unit thresholds use the national average of 2.5 persons per household. Because of local and regional variations to this average, the Census Bureau will consider variation while reviewing all tract revisions. The following 3 slides illustrate population growth in South Jordan, Utah over the last 3 decades, and the way in which the census tracts were split to reflect the growth and adhere to population thresholds, as well as the ability to compare statistics over time. Note also the way in which tract codes change, particularly suffixes as the splits occur. For the Census 2000, notice that each of the original 4 census tracts from 1990 have split 3 times. There were 12 census tracts where there were 4 in 1990. It is also important to notice that the external boundaries of the original 4 tracts from 1990 are maintained with the splits. South Jordan, Utah continued to experience growth in some areas between 2000 and 2010. You should be able to see the increase in population, especially in tract 1130.09, when comparing this slide with the 2 previous slides. There are still 12 census tracts in the county, but there were modifications made to 2 of the census tracts. 1130.09 split to form 1130.19 and 1130.20, reflecting substantial population growth. The participant in this area also chose to merge tracts 1130.15 and 1130.18, forming a new census tract 1146. Because there was no previous tract comparable to the tract formed from the merger, and because changes in suffix generally indicate that a split has occurred, the participant chose to assign a new tract code. Changes of this nature are permitted exceptions to the rule, but be aware they can cause confusion among users of census tract data. Please document the reasons for such changes so the Census Bureau can answer data user questions. Block groups are statistical geographic subdivisions of a census tract defined for the tabulation and presentation of data from the decennial census, the American Community Survey, and other selected statistical programs. Block groups nest within and completely cover census tracts nationwide. They form the geographic framework within which the Census Bureau defines and numbers census tabulation blocks. The block group number becomes the first digit of the 4-digit tabulation block. Each block group comprises a reasonably compact and contiguous cluster of census blocks. Census tracts may contain no more than 10 blocks, 9 standard and 1 composed of water. They are the smallest geographies for which the Census Bureau provides sample data from the ACS 5-year estimates. The following criteria apply to block groups in the United States, including federally recognized American Indian reservations and off-reservation trust lands, Puerto Rico, and the island areas. Block groups must not cross census tract boundaries, must cover the entire land and water area of each census tract, must comprise a reasonably compact and contiguous land area, with a few exceptions. Excuse me. As with census tracts, exceptions might include areas with unique population groups, land uses, or settlement patterns, such as coastal communities, a community ringing a lakeshore, valley settlements, and commercial and industrial development along a linear transportation route defined as a special use block group. Block groups must meet specific population and housing unit thresholds and suggested area and employment thresholds. Boundaries should follow visible and identifiable features. Block groups must meet specified population and housing unit thresholds as outlined in this table. This helps to ensure a minimum level of reliability in sample data, as well as availability of data when disclosure avoidance methodologies are applied. Like census tracts, the Census Bureau uses a housing unit criterion to accommodate seasonably occupied areas that may have higher populations at times of the year other than on Census Day, April 1st. A block group that exceeds minimum thresholds should be split. Those that drop below the minimum thresholds should be merged with those that drop below the minimum thresholds should be merged with adjacent block groups. If a participant chooses not to change threshold errant block groups, they must provide justification for their retention. Again, this assists the Census Bureau in its review of submitted block groups, as well as when answering questions from data users familiar with block group thresholds. Unlike census tracts, block groups may be completely redefined to meet local analytical needs. However, in doing so, please consider the impact on analysis of block group level data across time. In most cases, participants should use the 2010 census population counts for block group review. Locally produced population and housing unit estimates are permissible when reviewing and updating areas experiencing considerable growth since the 2010 census. The housing unit thresholds use the national average of 2.5 persons per household. Because of local and regional variations to this average, the Census Bureau will consider variation while reviewing all block group revisions. So to recap, census tracts subdivide and nest within counties, block groups subdivide and nest within tracts, and blocks nest within block groups. Census-designated places, or CDPs, are statistical geographic entities representing closely settled, unincorporated communities that are locally recognizable and identified by name. They are the statistical equivalents of incorporated places, with the primary difference being the lack of both a legally defined boundary and an active, functioning governmental structure chartered by state and administered by elected officials. CDPs include comunidades and zona urbanas in Puerto Rico. CDPs must constitute a single named closely settled concentration of population, must generally consist of a single piece of territory with a mixed residual, commercial, and other uses similar to that of an incorporated place of similar size. CDPs have no minimum population or housing unit thresholds, but must contain some population, housing units, or both. The presence of population, housing, or both is critical to the existence of the kinds of places we want to represent as CDPs. Names should be recognizable and used in daily communication by the residents of the community it represents. The name of a CDP should be based on locally known features or landmarks. Excuse me. For example, signs indicating when one is entering the community, highway exit signs that use the name, or businesses, schools, or other buildings that make use of the name. A CDP cannot have the same name as an adjacent or nearby incorporated place. Boundaries should follow visible features except in circumstances where the boundary is coincident with the non-visible boundary of a state, county, minor civil division, or incorporated place. Boundaries may follow other non-visible features in instances where reliance upon visible features would result in overbounding of the CDP in order to include housing units on both sides of a road or street feature. CDPs may cross county boundaries but must not cross state boundaries. CDPs cannot be located partially or entirely within an incorporated place or another CDP. Census county divisions and equivalent Census county divisions, or CCDs, and equivalent entities are statistical geographic entities established cooperatively by the Census Bureau and officials of state and local governments in 21 states where minor civil divisions either do not exist or have been unsatisfactory for reporting statistical data. And you can see these states listed on the screen. CCDs have been established where no minor legal civil divisions exist, no legal MCDs have no administrative functions or are not known to the public, boundaries of MCDs change frequently, or statistical units have no legal function. The Census Bureau discourages major revisions to CCDs since the primary goal of the CCD program over the past 50 years has been to establish and maintain a set of sub-county units that have stable boundaries and recognizable names. However, updates and revisions may be necessary in some instances where there have been revisions to census tract boundaries and CCD boundaries, or to resolve discrepancies where census tracts and CCD boundaries were supposed to be conjoint but were not. Revisions to CCD names may be necessary due to population changes within CCDs. Otherwise, names of existing CCDs should not be changed unless a compelling reason is provided. New CCDs should be named after the largest population center or historically central place within it. A CCD may be named after a prominent physical feature or an American Indian area. CCDs must have visible and/or stable boundaries. Boundaries must follow state and county boundaries and conform to census tract boundaries. Boundaries may follow the boundaries of federally recognized American Indian reservations and federal, state, or locally managed land. Boundaries may follow conjoint city limits. Boundaries may follow some non-standard visible features, such as major ridge lines, above-ground pipelines, intermittent streams, or fence lines. Boundaries may follow some non-standard non-visible features, such as parcel boundaries, straight line extensions, and other line of sight between accessible visible features. GUPs is the tool for PSAP response. It allows participants to review and modify the statistical geographies in a more efficient manner than in previous decades. GUPs integrates the standardized PSAP requirements and thresholds that define statistical geographies to eliminate the guesswork for participants. GUPs runs in both a desktop and PC. GUPs runs in both a desktop PC and a network environment. It runs in QGIS, an open-source geographic information system, and contains all functionality required to make updates, execute automated checks for program criteria compliance, and create standardized data output files for Census Bureau processing. Many of the menus and functionalities are solely part of QGIS and are not applicable to GUPs. For information on QGIS open source platform, please visit www.qgis.org. GUPs is available on DVD or by download from the PSAP website. I'm now going to hand things over to Mohammed, and he's going to lead the technical demonstration portion of the webinar.
Thank you, Mike. Just before we get started with QGIS and GUPs, you can download GUPs from the Census or the PSAP homepage. It's, if you go around almost the middle of the page, this is how you can download the GUPs to use for your changes in PSAP. The second thing I'd like to share with you is TigerWeb. TigerWeb can be used for your to reference different changes and layers. This is just a different tool that you can review the geographies and the boundaries for 2010 data layers. The third thing that I like to share with you here is the SWIM. And for SWIM, I assume here that all of the participants will get or receive a SWIM token, and it's going to be within your cover letter. And you register your account using this page. And by using your email address and creating a password, this is how you can be able to log in into GUPs. For GUPs, the system requirements for GUPs, you need about 3.3 gigabyte of space or a RAM of 4 gigabyte. That system, as Mike said, it operates in Windows 7, 8, and 10. This demonstration, I'm going to try to divide it into two sections. The first section, I'm going to work a county, and I'm going to select more like a small county so we can download the data fast. I'm going to submit this data. It's like I'm going to start reviewing the proposed plan and submit that plan to the census. And in the second part of the presentation, I'm going to open a county using 2010 layers, and I'm going to drive it through different functions and actions that we can take to the different do to the different geographies in order for us to submit based on the census requirements. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to go to the Start menu, and again, in this case, I'm going to assume that you downloaded and installed GUPs. You need to make sure that it's like in order to install GUPs in most of the government agencies, you need to have admin privileges in order for it to install a QGIS and the GUI or QGIS or the GUPs for PSAP too. Please follow the directions and each of the screens that you see. If you have installed a QGIS or GUPs before, make sure you uninstall before, make sure you click the uninstall in order for you to see the next window for install. A lot of people seems like they're forgetting that. The third thing that, or the second thing that I like to mention when you installing GUPs, make sure that you, in the end, when it's done, make sure that you hit the close button and don't hit the X in the right of the screen or window. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go to all programs, and I have installed my QGIS, and I'm going to go to QGIS 2.18 desktop. Going to click here, and as it opens, I'm going to open my QGIS desktop 2.18.15. It's going to take a couple of minutes to open, and while that is opening, different other things that I have seen, we have different options to download the data for and use the data in GUPs or in QGIS here. So when the program first opens, you get this map. If everything is installed correctly, you will get this map management window. Before I keep walking through this, I'm going to just go back here. If you have received the data in a DVD or a CD, your data is going to look somehow like this, what you see in here in the Window Explorer here. You will see that there is a shape folder. This shape folder contains the data. And if I double click here, you will see that it contains a folder for the state and a folder for the county. If you're working with multiple counties, you will see that you will receive multiple counties. Each one of those folders contain different data types. Most of the problems that I have seen, that you need to be aware that GUPs uses, or it's programmed to use certain versions of data layers. In this case, for the state, it's using 18 and version 2, or V2. And it has a large set of data, so you need to be careful what is based on the requirements, so you can't just be selective of what data layers you are selecting. All of these data layers and the names of these data layers required, you will see the list of those in the guide. And this is another resource for you to reference to for any questions about GUPs and how to use GUPs or how to do any of the actions in GUPs. It's detailed and it's large, or at least it looks large. It's not as large as you think, so don't make it scare you, because it's almost 200 pages, but it's full with images and pictures, and it's a step by step. As if you review one thing, it might save your time for a different layer. So if you review the census tracts, it might save your time when you review the block groups, but it is really a good reference to use. So I just moved here to the census, to the county folder. In the county folder, you see that we're using 18 V2 layers. But the difference between here and the states is that there's certain layers that is V3. This is another thing that, or a lot of common mistakes that I have received in the last couple of weeks, is that people try to download the data layers and they don't know which data layers to download. Again, in here, the way that and again, it could be the structure of the folders as well. So there is a selection of like 4 different layers that has 18 V3, and the V3 here is the proposed plan, or the 4 layers that is necessary for you and for everybody, for us. And it's the layers that we worked on to change the boundaries for census tracts and block groups. In order for me to select the data, when we're going to go back to the GUPs and select the data, I have multiple options to select the data to create my project and build my project. Please notice that if you have the data in DVD, CD, or you have the data in your computer downloaded and saved, you need to go just to the shape folder in order for GUPs to understand and build the project for you. It's not going to build a project if you're going to go to your county folder. So notice that it's very important for GUPs the way it's programmed, especially if you have multiple counties. This will save you a lot of time. You don't have to go and select. And remember this when I'm going to try to walk you through it in here when we first open GUPs. The first thing that we see in here is the map management window. And in the map management window, there is a couple of buttons here. I can open recent. So if you're working in a county as you're saving your county, you can come back here and open your county from here so you can continue and you don't have to download anything again. And it's your shortcut to download your county. This button here, import to project zip, it's important for if I'm going to share my work in the end and I export my project and I export my zip file to share with Mike here. Mike is my boss and he's going to review all of my changes. Mike is going to be able to receive my zip folder or zipped project and open it in his computer. And again, he needs to have GUPs installed in his machine. He can open it by opening import a project to zip. The difference between the project that you're gonna save, that I'm gonna save and share with Mike, my coworker, and the project that I'm gonna export to share with the census is totally different. Mike will be able to see all of my data layers, and I'm gonna share all of my data layers with Mike. But the project or the data files that I'm going to share with the census is going to be only the changed files, the selected change files. And the reason why we're doing that is because we need to maintain the size of the files when we submit it through SWIM. As Michael said earlier, the map view is what we see here. Before I go to that, let me just walk you through this so we can save some time as we can talk about the rest of what I'm talking about what we see in the map view here later on. So in the map management, under program here, I'm going to go and select my program. And as you see, we're using GUPs, and the GUPs application is developed for most of the programs that we're using here at the census with the participants, and this is how we collect the data for the different programs and the participants' input for our census programs. The Participant Statistical Area Program, or PSAP, is what I'm looking for, and that's what I need to select it from the program drop-down list. And again, we noticed that with the webinar, the program is kind of sensitive, plus we are behind some kind of like firewalls and sensitive servers, so this might slow our computer today, so please be patient with us. While that is working, and under normal circumstances, it's very fast. As you see here, the map view here, it shows the menu bar, the map view, the status bar here underneath, and the table of contents where I'm going to see my shapefiles. It's under the layers panel. I have most of these tools that you can see here in the view. They come with QGIS. You will see the add-in tools that are used specifically for GUPs. From the user type, I'm going to use county-based user, and for a state, I'm going to select my Alabama and the first county in Alabama. When that is selected, another list of different counties is going to be highlighted with yellow. These are adjacent counties to Otay County. We really recommend that you don't select any of those. If I want to select my adjacent counties, I will activate and check any of those boxes. But in order for GUPs to perform well, you don't need those. By downloading those, it's going to slow the program down, and it's going to take a lot of space in your computer and the data. So for the purpose of my example here, I'm not going to use it. Also, another thing to notice, if you receive the data in a CD or a DVD, you're going to receive the data for your own county. Your adjacent county is not going to be there. So you can add those adjacent counties as needed by downloading them from the census web, the same way that we're going to use today to download this data for our project. So I'm not going to select any county here, and I'm going to click open, and a second window will open, and the map management window here is going to tell me where I'm going to receive my data from, or what where the data source is at. In this case, I have CD or a DVD. I have my computer or Census Web. I'm going to use the Census Web because it's really easy. GUPS is smart enough. It's going to go and download all of the shape files is needed. I don't have to organize my folders. And all of these files is going to be downloaded and going to be installed in my C drive or wherever I have installed GUPS. And there is no need for me to come back and download this data unless I do mistakes and I have to clean my project, and we're going to talk about this later on. But as you see, the project is going to be downloading, and it's going to take a little bit of time to build the project. And in this case, it's calculating population and housing units based on the faces layer that has been downloaded. So it's going to aggregate the population and housing units for each of the block groups and census tracts. If you noticed, again, as we downloaded the GUPS project and the data, and we moved from the map management window, we have a new bounds been downloaded here. The new bounds, we can add a linear feature, delete a linear feature, add an attribute to a linear feature, or change an attribute for a linear feature. The modify area feature tool is this button. This is more like the heart or the engine of the project. Most of our work is we're gonna be using this tool to select our geographies, census tracts, block groups, CDBs, and CCDs, and do our edits and changes. This button here is to add or remove our legend. If I do any changes, I need to remember to use the renumbering tool or block group renumbering tool. The block group renumbering tool is used to make sure that I am consistent and I don't have any gaps in my block group numbers. And I have here review geography changes. By clicking in here, this tool might be very useful, especially for me to review the different changes that I did, but it's more used by the verifier, somebody like Mike. He want to review my work. He's going to see, the program is going to create a list of the different changes that I did by geography, and he's going to be able to go through them one by one without having to guess or trying to go through other tables to find out what kind of changes I have done. So it's really built in, and it's easy. Other than those, the next button here is like is the PSAP criteria review. The PSAP criteria review, any kind of issues that is against or needs to be fixed, something that is not following the criteria can be cached here. In the end, it says recommended before you export your project to share with a participant or to the census is that you run the criteria review check here. And it's going to run the criteria for all of the layers. It's going to identify some issues if there is any issues, or it's going to pass everything. And then you will be able to export. The export button will return you back to the criteria review button if you don't run the criteria review button before you do any changes. Also, please remember to save your project all the time. These button here, this is how we can import a zip county project. This is the tool that we're going to use to export our data files to share with participant or with the census. I can export my map or print my map using this button. These buttons here are very important. There is about 4 different ways to add imagery. The first one is to add imagery in our map view, and this is how, like as a default, if I click here, it's going to show the Esri. But as you see, we have the option of having Esri imagery or USGS imagery. Again, if I want to open map management tool, I can open the map management tool again from here. And this is like if I want to select my adjacent counties, I can go back here, select the same county, and select the adjacent counties and select to download the data from the census web the way that we downloaded this. I'm not going to do this now. This here, I call it the paintbrush, and it is GUPS data setting. I can use the GUPS data setting to do different things. if I don't have GUPs, if I didn't open my project, I can change the folder where GUPs is hosted. In this case, it's better to use whatever location you have installed GUPs, and the best location is the first location that was selected. But if you have some issues with like space issues and you have a server that you need to make to host GUPs and the folders for the exported files, you can map it through change folder. From the options menu, we're going to use this a little bit later on, you can go and clean project. And if you clean project, you can select any of those projects to clean. If I select this project now, the whole project and GUPs is going to close. I'm going to say cancel here so we can get started with what we're going to do. I'm going to click my engineer or the modify area feature tool. By clicking the modify area feature tool or any of those GUPs tools, the first time you click any of those tools, a window like this is going to be displayed in the screen, and it's going to tell you, or going to ask you, are you going to use the 2020 proposed plan or the 2010 geographies? The 2010 is going to take you back to the 2010 geographies, and you're going to do the changes in your own. I really recommend that that you use 2020 proposed plan. The 2020 proposed plan is going to save a lot of time. We have spent about a year and a half working on those layers for every single county in the country. We touched everything in the country, so please, and reviewed. So please make sure that you review this to save your time and make sure that you verify, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. So I'm going to select the 2020 and say OK. Make sure you verify any changes that the census did during this proposed plan or preparing for this proposed plan or complete this project. So the modify area feature tool opens here, and I have the different geographies. As I'm going to select from the drop-down list the different geographies, you will see that other windows or drop-down windows going to open, and you're going to see that those grayed out tools that I'm going to be using for my changes is going to be activating. And some of them is going to activate with different geographies. Some of them is going to be grayed out based on the geography. So I'm going to select census tracts. As I selected census tracts, I have a filter menu and an action. In the filter menu, again, because I really don't remember what is below and what is above maximum here for a threshold, I can just review this, and it helps me to review this by going to the above, and I know, and I can see this all the time, that it's greater than 8,000 people and greater than 3,200 housing units. If it's a below, it will be less than 1,200 and it will be less than 480 housing units. We recommend that we start with the above maximum for the census tracts and the block groups when we edit them. So we first start editing by using the above maximum for census tracts, and then we go to the below and finish with them. And again, I'm starting with census tracts first, and again we go and we select the geography as block groups, and we edit our layers or we review our layers for the block groups. Another thing to notice before we start changing and reviewing this 2020 plan, the GUPs comes in. We did select the 2020 proposed plan, but we have built into here different layers for your review. So you can see area landmarks, and you can see the 2010 data geographies that I wanted to talk about. The 2010 geographies, you can, as you see, there is CCD, CDBs, census tracts, and block groups. If I'm working with census tracts and block groups, I can just check, and it can tell me where most of the work been done for census tracts. And if I do the same thing for block groups, it's gonna show that as well. Please notice that there is a dotted line here that is showing, and this shows the changes that it's like where, it's like, for example, there is no dotted lines in here, and this means that something, the block group was split here. So you can use those layers, and you don't have, Again, you can add any layers that you might have as a reference to help you, but we built all of this into the system here so you don't have to go and look any further for any of those layers to download. I'm just going to check that for now, and I'm going to start reviewing my census tracks. And again, I selected the 2020 because I want to review this very quickly, make sure that the census did the work that needs to be done, and I wanted to finish this by submitting to this project through SWAM. This way you will have an idea of how to open a project, how to review it, and how to submit to the census. We're going to open a second project, and we're going to do some actions by doing different changes. You can do the same thing in here as needed. You can bring two block groups together, merge them, or any of the other changes. So in this case, I'm going to go to census tracks. I'm going to select above maximum, and in my window here, it doesn't display anything. This means, if you remember before, with no filter, it lists here all of the census tracks. The same thing with the block groups. If I selected the block groups with the no filter, it's going to list all of the block groups. Please remember also in your disk, you're going to receive an Excel file that's going to tell you where most of the changes happen. And you're going to see a sheet that's going to list the census tracks that has changed and the block groups that has changed if there is any changes in block groups. So make sure you review this as you receive this data. And I could use that as well to show me the changes and review those changes. I'm going to go here and select my census tracks. Above maximum, we said there is nothing in the list. Below minimum, there is nothing in the list. And I'm assuming that I reviewed all of my boundaries and everything is okay, so I'm going to move to my block groups. And in my block groups, I'm going to use the above maximum, and everything is fixed. I'm going to use the below. And in here, it tells me that there is something going on. And the census has left two block groups here for some reason. So I'm going to, from the info list here, I'm going to select one. And by double-clicking on it, GUPs is smart enough to zoom into that area. One thing that I can do here, I'm going to go and add my imagery so I can review what's happening in here. And I can zoom in and out from this area as I wish. In this case, my housing unit is within threshold. The minimum here is 240, and my housing units is 272. My problem seems like I'm missing about 30 people for population. Seems like in 2010, when this block group was created, something was happening. Maybe there is some changes and increase in population, or there is some loss in population from 2010 until now. But it is really important too, as we talked about in the criteria, that we use visible boundaries. And the boundaries that this block group has, it's been used from census tracks. So these are good boundaries and strong boundaries. The same thing with this boundary that passes here through multiple tracks. So these are things that we need to look at to maintain the historical block group here and the historical data. In this case, I'm not going to do any actions like merge this with another block group, because I like to maintain this block group and boundaries. I'm going to go and change attribute. In the change attribute here, I can go and give a justification. I can say other. I'm going to say housing units is within threshold. I'm going to click OK, and another OK. I'm going to say save. As I did that block group has been removed from the list because I justified why it is okay to keep. I'm going to zoom into my second block group here. In this case, I'm going to use a third option here that I have to review imagery, and this is going to take me to the census web. So I'm going to select a point here. I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to use a Google map. You can use Bing Map if that is what you like. I really came here to Google Maps so I can review what's happening in this area. And it seems like somebody in 2010 thought that there is a new development coming in, there is an increase in population, but things didn't go well in this area. So in order for me, and if I'm a planner or I'm more familiar with the area, I will know more historical data about what's happening, and this is why the census probably left this for me to review. In this case, I will go back and say, you know, I'm going to merge this to the adjacent block group. And again, I'm going to zoom a little bit out, review my area, review my boundaries, see what's going on in this area. And if I agree to do that, if I see that it's better to merge this with adjacent block group, I will do that. I really zoomed a little bit out so you can see that there is 4 block groups here. So when I merge this, and I really wanted to show you the block group IDs. Just so you can notice how the number is going to change. So this one here shows 0208.03-2. And this one here, 020803-4. So I'm going to click my targeted one, and I'm going to select with the yellow button. So I use the blue button to select my targeted block group. And I'm going to use the yellow button or select features to select my adjacent or the block group that is under threshold. Notice too that under the window here, as we selected those together, we have housing units, the total of housing units that I'm going to have if I create a new block group, and the total population. So if I'm okay with this number and the total, I'm going to go and click this plus sign, which is the merge. This plus sign can change depending on the action that you're doing. So it could be a split. So in this case, I'm going to click plus or the merge to add these together. So now I got those block groups together, and automatically GUPs generated this new block group number. If we go a little bit further to review the other block groups, we see that there is some gap or some numbers missing, and it's not consistent. So we have 1 here, and we have 3 here, and 5, the new one that was created. So I'm going to save my work, and I'm going to go back to this 5, and I'm going to run the renumbering tool before I submit this to the census to make sure that everything looks nice. And as you see, the number has changed here to 3, so everything is consistent. At this point, I don't have any changes for CDBs and CCDs, so I'm going to save my project. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to run the criteria review tool, and it's going to tell me that everything is good to go. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click this export to zip button. And as I did this, I have to select between those 2 options. I can select export to the census or share with another participant. And I think I'm not going to talk any further about this. I'm going to export to the census because I'm not sharing this project. If I'm sharing this project with my boss, Mike, I was going to select this. But at this point, Mike approved all of the work and he doesn't have any problems, so I'm going to export to the census. And I'm going to click OK. And automatically, I'm going to give this pop-up window. And I'm just going to go as simple as possible because I'm testing multiple files. I'm going to call this test 3. So we can catch this file before somebody started processing it. And I'm going to enter all of the necessary fields, anything with asterisk, red asterisk. I'm going to add my email address. And I'm going to click OK. As I'm clicking OK, GUPs is going to go and generate a zipped file that I'm going to send to the census. And it's going to give me the option to open open a window explorer for the location where this file is going to be created and saved. So I'm going to click yes. And as you see in the window explorer here, it tells me that if I go to this folder, the output folder in my computer, I will be able to find the project that we just exported, the first one, 01001. Again, I've been testing other counties or working with other counties doing other things, so you might have only one project if you're working on one county only. At this point, I'm going to go to swim. And we said that we registered our account. So in this case, I'm going to put my email address. And I'm going to use my password. And I'm going to log in. And normally you log in, you might have, again, if you're working with one county, you might have no submissions. I'm going to start upload. It's going to ask me what program I'm going to submit to the PSAP. I'm going to click next. I'm going to select that I worked in a county, not a tribal today, so I'm going to click next. I'm going to select my state. I'm going to select my county. Next. I'm going to add a file. I'm going to go to where my GUPs is. And I'm going to go to my output folder. And here is the zipped file that I just finished or I completed to submit to the census. I'm going to click open. As that is uploading, you'll see that the next button here is grayed out. Also, I'm going to add a comment. You can add any comments you had about the file that you'd like to share with the census. So now I can click next. And I will receive a thank you message here that my file been submitted. At this point, I finished the county. But let's assume that I worked in this county and I had too many mistakes and I really don't like the work that I did. And I reviewed this and I tried to do, or I've reviewed the census proposed plan and I don't agree at all with what they have done. At this point, I can go here to the GUPs, paintbrush, or the GUPs data settings. And from the options, I'm going to select a clean by project. And I'm going to select my 01001 project. You need to do this if you work in this county, in a county that you messed up a file, because you need, and this will take you to download the project again. And that's what I'm going to do at this point. When I do this, and because my project is open, you will see that it's going to close everything. And my project is going to close, and I have to reopen my QGIS or GUPs and download the data again so we can do the continue our exercise today. So I'm going to click OK and OK. At this point, my project should be cleaned from my directory or from the GUPs folder. I'm going to go here again where I started from the beginning. I'm going to select the QGIS 21815 to open my QGIS project. And since I like that first county all the time, I'm going to go to that same county. But at this point, I'm going to select that same county, but select vintage 2010 because I said I don't like what the census proposed, or I don't like what the way that the changes were made for that file. So participant statistical area program, county-based user, Alabama, Taya County. And I'm not going to select any of those adjacent counties. I'm going to say open. Please remember, if you use CD or DVD, you need to scroll only to that shape folder that we were talking about earlier. But again, I'm just doing this from the census web. Just so you are aware of this, in different times of the day, especially this last week, we've been having some error messages bumping up from, and it bumps up in here. It's like a 9999 error. And this is caused when I download the data. And this is caused because unexpected server outage is happening sometimes during the day. It shouldn't happen, and any of the maintenance things that's happening should happen during the nighttime. But I think there is something that it triggers this to happen. But within like the next hour, things are resolved, so you can start working and downloading your project at any time. Again, just as a reminder, what we're doing here is like it's downloading the layers, it's calculating population and housing units, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go here to the map, to the modify area feature tool, and instead of 2020, I'm going to select the 2010. Remember that all of the 2020 layer is going to be lost. The same thing if I selected 2010 first. If I selected 2010 first, all of those layers are going to be lost. So regardless to what you do, if you want to go back to the 2020 in this case, if you messed up like 2020 proposed plan, and you want to go back to it, you can, but you have to download the data fresh. I just wanted to verify this because I had this question in multiple emails as well. So in this case, I'm going to select 2010 because I need more work to do so we can learn more about how to split things and modify the geographies. I'm going to select census tracts. And I'm going to go right away to like the filter and select above maximum. And I'm going to try to do as many of those changes before Mike start giving me a hard time and tapping and hitting my back, because Mike likes to provide the different websites and provide more information for the participants. And I feel like that those actions are really important, so I'm going to try to go through as many as I can and cover them as fast as possible. So I selected this census tracts above maximum, and when I select above maximum, I can, it's like if you see the actions here, merge, boundary change, split by block groups, and split by faces. We recommend when you do working with census tracts that you work with split by block groups as much as possible and wherever it's visible. So in this case, I'm looking that this is my census tract. I'm going to split by block groups. I have my targeted selected. I can use the blue button to unselect this. I can select it from the info list, or I can select it from by clicking the blue button and click on the map. In order for me to select the block groups, as I'm looking at this, I think this is a good spot to split this. So I'm going to select my select features button, and I'm going to select the targeted or whatever area the block groups that I'm going to split and move them out. Please notice that this button here has two errors going different, the opposite direction. This is now my split by block group tool. Before, when we were a little bit before, when we worked with merging, it was a plus sign. So I'm going to click the split. And this is how you split by using a block groups. I'm going to go to my filter again because I know that I had other census tracts that are above maximum. I'm going to click from the info table and double click on it to zoom in. In this case, I'm going to make it a little bit harder for myself. I'm going to add the imagery just to make sure that I know where I'm going. I should have done this earlier, but I was trying to cover this fast as possible. So I'm going to zoom into this area here because I'm familiar with my area, as I lived in this county for a long time. That's not true. So I'm going to use a different tool here or a different action. I'm going to select by split by faces. So my targeted is selected. I'm going to select features by a freehand this time. So this can have, it's like you can select feature and you have different ways to select them. You can create a radius. In this case, I selected by freehand. I'm going to click in a starting point, and I'm going to draw around a linear feature or a visible linear feature that I like to use to select. In this case, I'm selecting this boundary because of the area where I'm zoomed in, but I'm not going to follow that line. I'm going to try to follow this linear feature. And since this is the county boundary, I'm going to go a little bit outside so I can select all of the faces within this area, and it's going to be within my tract that I'm trying to split. So here I have selected some faces within the tract. I don't like whatever been selected outside, so this is my time now to clean this. I'm holding the control key and I'm clicking into those different faces that been added to my selection because I didn't hold a steady hand while I was selecting, or I was clicking outside of the area. And I see that there is another face. So this is a good time to do any of those changes as needed and whenever you need them to clean anything that you don't want to add into your area. Otherwise, you have to do this later on when you're reviewing your boundaries. So let's say that I'm satisfied with my selection and this is the new boundary that I like to add for my tract. I'm going to click the split here, and I can, again, I split this in half. It's like I have done this multiple times. So my new housing unit is about 2,200, and my population is almost like 6,000. So I'm going to split this by using my selection. Now I have created two different census tracts, and my new tract should have automatically has a new number here. So I have 0204.04 and here 02.8.03. And this was one of those things that Mike mentioned about how we need to be consistent, keep the numbers. So it's built on, you don't have to guess, you don't have to think about what you're going to do. It's built on, just please notice that these are the correct numbers and review them as you're doing the work. The next option is like here, we need to change a boundary. And I can do this for a tract, and I'm going to zoom into this area. And I'm too picky in this area because I just did the work for it. So let's say that I need to add these faces here to my boundary because it is recommended not to have those zigzags lines, and to make sure that your boundary is clear and using a visible feature, and if it's possible, whenever it's possible, to use the same visible feature. So I'm going to click to my blue or select target area. I'm going to select this tract as my target, and I need to add select my features by using the yellow button. I'm going to click in those faces. I'm going to hold the control key and select my next face. So if I'm satisfied with this, I'm going to say, click the plus sign to add area. So the plus here, it could be for a merge or add area. You will see it, and that's what we're going to use. This is important too, to notice that the blood group gets highlighted. If my targeted blood group is not highlighted, I can select from the list here to see which one I want to add those selected faces to. Since it's highlighted and it's the correct one, I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to move on to a different geography. At this point, we did a boundary change, we did a split for blood groups, we did a split by faces. So let's see if we have anything below threshold. There is nothing below threshold. So it seems like we cleaned this, but in order for us to cover the merge, it's the same thing for the blood groups as well. The same option, the same way we did it earlier. So I'm going to go to census tracts here. Can I use no filter? And let's say I'm going to, for some reason, I'm going to merge this one with this one. So I'm going to select my target from the list. I'm going to select the merge option under the actions. I'm going to select features, and I'm going to select my tract. Now I will be able to click the plus sign to add those tracks. And I'm going to do this just for the purposes of this exercise. All right. I'm going to go to the blood groups. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with above maximum. We did some changes earlier, but in this case, I'm going to see what I left behind earlier. So this is the track that we just split, and it seems like the blood group, because we created a new census tract, had only one blood group, and the population is like 7,000. I have 3,000 housing units, so I'm gonna use a split. I don't have in this case split by blood groups because I have one blood group. So I'm forced to use a split by faces. So I'm gonna use the select features by polygon, and this way I'm gonna click in one of those areas and draw and add a point as I'm going using my right button of my mouse and select the areas that I like to add and the faces to split this blood group. I'm going to go back to select features, and I'm going to just select anything that is outside of the area. I'm going to make sure that I selected everything in these small faces, so it seems like I did here. The same thing in the bottom here. If everything is selected as I want it to be, and in here it's selected, I'm going to click split to split this. Again, this might be like not the best way to split this, but based on this is just for presentation purposes and so we can get more familiar with the tools. Again, if I go to the blood groups, it might and say above maximum. It's going to tell me that my second blood group here needs to be split, and I can do the same thing. I can use any other action. So I have it selected. I'm going to use any other action to create my polygon. And this way I'm going to clean now whatever is outside by holding the control key. And I'm satisfied with this population, so I'm going to click the split bond to split it here. If you like to change a boundary somewhere or add a linear feature, you can do that. So let's say I want to add a linear feature here because somehow I'm going to move my boundary to here using this face, or this, I need to use the property line here. You can go add linear feature and click the your starting point. And close by right click, and in here I'm going to call this property line and click OK. In order for me to delete a feature, I'm going to click the delete, and I don't like this linear feature, or it doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to get this pop-up window. Are you sure you want to delete? I'm going to say OK. I'm going to still say OK because I understand it's used for a boundary. You're going to get those axes in there and you're going to see them. This is going to be used for our review here, just to verify that nothing been deleted by mistake, and we're going to review this. The other geographies is the same way. We can go through CCDs and CDBs the same way. As you see, the filter actions, you can create below, minimum, or above. In the filter, in the boundary, you can change a boundary or you can create a new district. So for example, if I want to review an area here of a CDB, I zoomed into the CDB and I'm going to zoom into this area because I need to add those faces. I know that they have been added into the CDB. And this would have been another. So if as I have it selected here, if I go to add a new feature and I select this area, you see that it's going to add all of this area. And that's not what I want. I want to use just this property line. So I'm going to select here, deselect, and I'm going to add a linear feature here. Right click, and you can select a property line again, or you can use a fence line. It depends what linear feature you're adding. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Save. Make sure you save all of your actions and as you're working on them, because any problem with a program and you are forced to close it, you might lose all of the work if you're not saved. So I'm going to click my targeted. I selected it. Going to select my yellow band and add. And here I'm adding those faces to my CDB. If I'm going to zoom out to this area, I'm going to add a new CDB here so I can give Mike a little bit time to finish and we open it for questions. The same actions can be done for CCDs, but I'm just going to close this so I can add a new entity. So I'm going to add as action a new district. You see it's grayed out because I'm not changing a boundary or I'm not editing an existing one. So by using the select features, and I'm going to use the features by polygon, I'm going to create a new CDB in this area. In this case, I'm going to unselect anything outside and doesn't exist and I don't want to add. So if I'm satisfied with this and I have a population here of like 1420 and 580, if I'm okay with that, I'm going to click here to this add entity button. This is how I add a new CDB. And I'm going to call this test, and we call it 2 at this time. But again, based on the criteria, it needs to have a name. There needs to be signs. There is other criteria that you need to review how to suggest to add a new CDB. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click OK here because I am OK with that. And I'm going to click Save. Automatically, it added everything that it needs to add as a new CDB. At this point, I'm going to turn this presentation to Mike so he can finish. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mohammed, for the wonderful technical demonstration. I'm going to now highlight some supplemental sources that you can use for your PSAP review, and then we'll open up things for questions. If you can please navigate to slide 79, Mohammed. All right. This section describes 4 supplemental sources to consider while performing PSAP review: TigerWeb, American Indian Areas Layer, Area Landmark and Point Landmark Layers, and Parcel Boundaries. Not all of these sources may be available or applicable to each participant's universe of counties. The Census Bureau's TigerWeb online map viewer is located at tigerweb.go.census.gov/TigerWeb, and it allows participants to view Census Bureau's 2010 census geography layers outside of the GUPs environment. TigerWeb allows viewing at street-level detail features such as roads, waterways, and county, place, or city, CDP, census tracts, block groups, and other boundaries, and satellite imagery. Participants may find this additional tool beneficial to visualize the 2010 census tracts and block groups for comparison to their 2020 proposed plan in order to verify the changes or determine if there is a need to make additional changes. Because it resides outside of GUPs, participants can open TigerWeb in a separate window or on a second dual monitor for a side-by-side visual comparison. The American Indian Areas layer within GUPs provides a supplemental source for understanding what entities cause tracts to code to the 94XX range and can serve as a very strong legal feature for establishing and correcting tract and block group boundaries. The 94XX code series is reserved for standard census tracts that are delineated either within or primarily to cover an American Indian reservation or off-reservation trust land while also adhering to the standard census tract criteria. Some areas of the country, primarily in the Southwest, have counties with the majority of tracts coded to the 94XX range. Major changes to reservation areas happen infrequently, so the Census Bureau does not anticipate that PSAP will produce any new 94XX coded tracts. As a tool for determining whether a census tract or block group could be a special land use area, it can sometimes be helpful to activate the area landmark or point landmark layers within GUPs. While providing a useful visual, many landmarks do not qualify as a special use areas because of their aerial extent. Additionally, existing landmarks may not have any distinguishing features in aerial imagery to help with drawing boundaries and may not necessarily map to the extent of the special land use geographic entity. As a supplemental layer, area landmarks give participants another tool to describe a special land use area that is apparent directly from the visible land use characteristics. In some situations, non-visible legal linear features can be preferred as boundaries for census tracts and block groups. At the smallest scale, participants can use parcel boundaries for reference to developments or contiguous personal plots if no other solution for splitting an area is present. Parcel boundaries are particularly useful when working census tracts that contain neighborhoods characterized by cul-de-sacs that form dangling edges in the database, meaning that there is frequently not a closed circuit of visible features available to connect all of the housing units associated with that development. Another great resource is the PSAP website. The PSAP website is the one-stop shop for everything PSAP related. The PSAP website can be used to download GUPs, download respondent guides, access the proposed change files, view webinar schedules, and everything else you need to know about PSAP. And sometime next week, we should have videos of the webinar posted to the website as well. The Census Bureau provides assistance by answering questions, clarifying criteria, guidelines and procedures, and providing information concerning specific situations that participants encounter when reviewing, delineating, and submitting their statistical plans. For questions concerning technical problems with the GUPS application or specific programmatic questions, support is available by telephone at 844-788-4921. Once again, that's 844-788-4921, and by email at geo.psap@census.gov. For those interested in social media and other ways to stay informed, this slide depicts the various methods to connect with the Census Bureau through alerts, memorandums, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest. Thank you for listening to Muhammad and I today, and now we would like to open up the floor for questions.